I'm John from Gen X Grown Up, and lucky you, you're watching Glenn's Retro Show.
Hi everybody, thank you for joining me on today's edition of Glenn's Retro Show. Today we're going to be talking about another, console I've 3D printed. I do like some of the older games. I do like quirky games and things along those lines. But ultimately, one of the first games I did play as a kid back in the day was Pong. And I do enjoy Pong. It's a good two-player game. You can play it on some systems against the computer AI, but that was never really fantastic. But when you have two people playing it, it's a really fun game. So about a year or so ago, a company called BLAZE, they came out with one of these little guys. I already did a review of this here, and a few of my friends did as well. And at the time, I was very hopeful because they were making a Pong breakout type of game with actual paddles or potentiometers, which is something you need for these types of games. Let's just take a quick relook at the BLAZE Pong. So BLAZE didn't do a terrible job, but they also didn't go out of the way to make a really good product. I mean, I do like the look of the design. It's got the wood, layout on here. The on-off button that looks like a coin door, and then they did put obviously spinners on here. You see lots of these games from at games that has paddle games on it. They're using just the joystick. A lot of people do that. It's not just at games, but that's not how you play games like Breakout and Pong. You actually need a spinner or a potentiometer. So I was pretty hopeful when this thing had come out. Like, oh my God, they got potentiometers on. This thing's gonna be great. But then I played it and noticed they did the same thing that Arcade 1-Up had done with their original Tempest cabinet, where it wasn't a true potentiometer. It was actually even worse than that, but it had the clickiness. When you turned it, it actually would make little clicks. Now, in Arcade 1-Up's case, it was almost like a TV dial type of a rotary encoder. Here, this was literally the mouse wheel. If you take a USB mouse apart and you have that rubber wheel on there and the little clicks you feel, that's what they used in here. So they really cheaped out. So I was really upset about that. Now I actually talked to the developer, the person who actually worked on the device for BLAZE, and he was a little upset as well. He knew that when they were releasing this and the way they wanted to release it was not the right thing to do. He wanted to put in real potentiometers. He wanted to fix the emulation code. The emulation on here is, again, maybe a 6 or 5 out of 10. It does the job, but it's not very well. And the main tile here is Pong. It does play Pong, but the AI is really bad. It's better if you play against another player. But even then, it doesn't really play like true Pong. And again, if you didn't play Pong in the arcade or home on Atari, you may not notice. But anyone who has played Pong will notice that the ball doesn't really travel as well, as fast. You can't get the ricochets on there. Long story short. But there's other games in here like Circus Atari, Breakout, Super Breakout, Night Driver, Warlords, which again they kind of ruined with only having one button here. And you need, if you have two people playing Warlords, you need 2 buttons to hold the ball. But in any case, getting off the total topic of this video. But at least it was something. And I did like it. I purchased it. It was a little disappointing, but still it was Pong and had potentiometers and you could play it. Now step into one of my friends, Bruce Yager. And Bruce Yager has a history of taking these things apart and using wood, design something around it. Bruce Yager did it once already with a Jack-specific Pac-Man that had pole position on it. And he took it apart and made a pole position cabinet, which I have in my collection as well. Really nice job. So the next thing Bruce had done is he had taken this Pong from BLAZE and converted it into this. He turned it into a miniature version of the arcade Pong by Nolan Bushnell and Atari. And I saw that, I said, damn, that's really nice. I would love to have that, but I'm no good with wood. I mean, could I probably do it? Maybe. But you need to kind of have an artistic eye when you're making something out of wood and designing something like that. What I can do is 3D print. So I contacted one of my friends, Gary, who's much better at designing stuff in 3D, and talked to Bruce, and he agreed that it'd be a great idea to make a 3D printed version of this to release to the community. If they have this BLAZE and want to turn it into something at least that looks more the part, not so much plays the part. So that's what we're going to be talking about in this video, on how we're going to turn this into the arcade version of Pong. And we'll get to it right after this quick note from my sponsor. Okay, Angel, make some great marquees. I love all the ones I have here. But let's get into the video. Let's see how we're going to turn this into a 3D printed version of the Arcade Pong by Atari. Let's go.
Okay, well, the first thing you need to do in this particular project is actually, print your parts. So, Bruce Yager had his original design, and Gary came up with a 3D printed design, and it came out really, really well. And, unlike my my last project, which was a 3D printed Warlord's table that took 300 hours, this probably took maybe 40 hours printing. The side panels took about 11 hours each side. Everything else was about 3 hours or less to print the additional parts. But you can see how well they come out. And the good thing about 3D printing over working with wood, and I still take my hat off to Bruce Yager for working with wood, is once you have the design and you are able to print it, you can print multiple copies. They should come out more or less identical. And it's also really fun watching things just be printed from nothing into something. And here are the spinner tops you would use with the original Blaze controller if you wanted to keep those in place, which originally I was going to do, but I decided if I'm going to do this, I'm going to swap out the encoders as well and use the better ones. So here is one of the side panels, and again, this should have been printed in black. After doing everything, I remembered back in the day everything being so yellow with Pong, but in actuality, only the control panel and the screen bezel was yellow. The rest of the unit was either wood or black. But I still think it's going to come out okay with this color on here, because this will be covered, and it'll just be the trim for the most part in the yellow color. I can always use magic marker on it to make it black, or just reprint the sides. But again, this is just version 1, and you can see here's my Anycubic i3 Mega, which I did print this on, and it's got a very good glass base on here, which is very good at holding in the adhesion of the parts. But this was being printed literally standing up, and it just was higher than it had more on the base, and a couple of times it fell over and it didn't print right. So by putting this painter's tape on here, it just helps with the adhesion, and you can see how well it came out. So very, very well done. And again, just got to print it and wait till it's all done. So here is the inside. You can see everything is already pre-slotted. You don't have to go with woodworking to make these or screw them in place. Everything is designed for it to kind of slot together. Your screen will go here, your bezel will go here, your control panel, the front of the unit, the base of the unit. These will be for some locking panels on our version 1 here, like these little girders. They'll go in here and hold it in place. And then how you're going to hold your rear control panel on here. So here is Blue. He was interested for a little while, looking at how this is coming out. Just a quick test fitting. Here's your screen bezel for your monitor, your side, and here's where you could be your power button. This, out of everything in here, probably could have used supports. This was printed face down, so it still did print, and I was able to salvage this. I just cleaned this up for the power button to go in here. But overall, Blue seems like he's kind of impressed. I don't know if he's going to make it the whole night, but again, this is a test fitting, and everything fit well. Gary did a really good job with his tolerances. Again, just picked out most of the parts. Again, this side was about 11 hours, this side 11 hours. This here was maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours tops, maybe half hour. The bottom piece here is maybe 3 hours. So aside from these sides out of about 11 hours, the rest went pretty well. And what's kind of neat about it is the 3D printing has a texture which will kind of feel like wood when you put your paper on here. But again, it's just going together very well. I'm pretty happy with this so far. And here are the spinner tops. Now in the original Pong, the skirt wouldn't be here. It just would have been these knobs. I like the skirt look, so I asked Gary to put them on there. I think we have a version without the skirt, but I like it with the skirt. And this is the control panel you would have used with your Blaze unit. Again, everything here, aside from this control panel, everything else in this picture should be printed in black PLA, not the yellow, but for some reason I remember the machine being yellow more than it was. If you look at the arcade unit, it's not the case. But that's kind of how I printed it, so I still think it's going to look nice. Oh, yep, I lost Blue. He decided it's taking too long, and he decided to go take a nap. Well, he is 8 years old now. He's a good dog, so I guess I'll let him have his time to rest. I did print the top piece in black. I was going to put that in black anyway, because that's how the top of the unit should be. This will actually be wood grain, wood grain, wood grain, wood grain. And this should have been black. I could always use a black painter marker if I really wanted to change it, but I'm probably going to leave it as it is. And you can see the screen back bezel and the back panel You can kind of see in this shot as well. But the machine went together extremely well. The tolerances were perfect, Gary. Did a great job. And here is the back piece. You can see right now, it doesn't look like it fits properly, but that's because it's two separate pieces. It kind of slides and locks together. But you can see this is kind of how everything gets held in place. These kind of slot in and hold these sides together. And there's going to be a bar going across. And this will hold that bar in place. Another bar here that'll hold these two sides in place. And then your speaker area here, volume control, and your power would be up here. And your battery compartment's going to be down here in this opening. So here's the encoder that I used. I got it from DigiKey. And I think they're about $1.60, $1.70 a piece. I got like 4 of them. And if you look it up online, it may say it's a clicky encoder, but it tricks you. The spinning left and right of this encoder is not clicky. It's extremely smooth. But the encoder does have the ability to press in. So you can spin left, spin right, and press in. The press in is the clicky part. So if you read this part and say, Glenn, it's a clicky spinner. It's not. It is a smooth spinning, turning spinner with an additional press down click, which we're not going to use, so it just won't do anything. But the encoder itself works very, very well. And here is the encoder. You can see there's 1, 2, 3. These are the 3 we're going to use for the left and right. This side here is the click. If you want to press down, it would click. But what's good about this spinner is not only is it smooth spinning, which again you could do with the original encoder if you follow my modification in the link down below, but you can literally spin this 50% for full travel in the game. If you use the one that came with Blaze, you got to spin it like twice to have it go one time. So you got do a lot more movement to make it work. So this is actually the better way to go. So my hats off to Willie over at Arcade USA for this suggestion and sending me this particular Blaze unit to modify. And here it is, right here. You can see it's got this little cutout here. All these spinners do. And we made our top, lock in place with this. And that's really it. But this spinner is definitely worth, I think, for $1 or $2 to add. Now this was surprising. I got this off Amazon, and it was $7. It was with shipping. It was like $9 shipped to the house. And some of the reviews weren't very, very good if you're using it for like a bigger project. But for this project here, this stuff works fantastic. It goes on easy. It cuts easy. It sticks great. I'll put a link down below to it. Works very, very well. These two little guys down here, again, if you're using the original Blaze spinner tops, you kind of need them for that. But I end up swapping mine out. But in the file you'll download from Thingiverse, you can get both versions. We're going to have the version for the Blaze unit, or if you want to change the encoders out. And I do recommend changing out the encoders. But again, this wood stuff here came out really nice. So here it is. There's the original control panel for Blaze, and here's the one that was printed for these new encoders. And again, this was probably the only part aside from the screen bezel here that was yellow. Everything else should have been black, but oh well, live and learn, right? So you can see right here, the new spinner is kind of this locking nut. So the skirt hides it, and it sits kind of low. This is the first one we printed. It was a little too high, didn't go down all the way, so it was very easy to fix. And I think again, it's going to look really, really well done. And you can see here's the power button area that really should have probably used some supports when I printed. But again, I can clean this up, and these worms, I call them worms, will come out, and this will work just fine. Just another shot of everything over here. Again, the tolerances that are done here, it's like a Tesla maybe. Maybe it's a little bit off like a Tesla would be, but everything fits in really, really nice, and nothing's locked in place yet. It's still kind of loose. You can kind of see back here the bars that'll go inside across to lock everything in place. Here's just a test fitting of everything. Here is the original encoder. You can see for the Blaze, it kind of sits lower. These are now on the new encoders here. Just a test fitting so everything kind of locks in place. This again is our version 1 cabinet. Gary's already working on version 2. That's even more robust, but to be quite honest, after working with this one, it's actually pretty darn good. But if you want to print this one or version 2, that'll be up to you. Again, just a test fitting. You can see here the letters are black, which they should be. I printed this on regular paper just to test it out. You'll see later I printed on glossy paper and it came out gray. I guess I didn't tell the printer I was printing on glossy paper, so it kind of changed it, but still looks good. But I can fix that easy enough. But just a quick test fitting showing how all the parts interlock. So the next thing we really need to do now is start putting on our wood so we can start building this sucker. Here's a shot of the inside, just showing how here are the bars. So when you push in your back panel, you have these bars in place that'll be all held in, and these will make the machine rigid so that the front doesn't kind of open up on you and everything just fall apart. Once these are in place, everything is locked in really, really well. And you can see the screen bezel will slide in here. This is actually the bottom. I have this upside down. These long parts should be down here, and these should be at the top. And then your back panels will screw into the back here. Your top will screw in up here. So very nice design that Gary did. So here are all the parts you're going to need. Again, these two took 11 hours. This maybe took 3 hours. This maybe took an hour and a half. This maybe took 3 hours. Half hour to an hour maybe. A half hour to an hour maybe. This maybe took half hour. This took half hour. These took about an hour. So overall, not too long to print. But again, once you do that, you can print as many as you like. Again, pretty much everything here should be black, really, except for this piece right here and your screen bezel. And of course, these guys should be a silver or gray color. But everything else really should be black if you want to make it like the actual arcade. Live and learn. I still think it's going to come out fine when I do mine. So the next thing we do now is disassemble the Blaze unit itself. We're going to be using quite a bit from this machine, but also maybe 3 pieces getting tossed away. So basically, taking it apart is not too difficult. On the side here, there's a few screw holes covered by fake decal wood. Since you're not going to be using it anymore, you can just puncture right through it and get to the screws. This was taken off in a proper way because we thought we were going to mod it differently when Willie sent this to me. But basically, just 1, 2, 3 screws. I think 4 screws on each side. Yep, 1, 2, 3, 4 on both sides. And when you take those screws out, they come right off, piece of the cake. And then the rest of these we'll just push out with a flathead screwdriver and a couple more screws in the back. But be very, very careful taking it apart. The wires in here are kind of cheap, and you don't want to break them. If you do, you can just resolder them. So we now take 1, 2, 3, 4 screws on your volume, speaker, power area. Okay, so just take those screws out, and the back panel should just slide right off. And take note, or look at my video where all these wires go. What's kind of nice is they did use the ZIF zero insertion force sockets, so it's very easy to unplug everything. But you want to make sure you know where they go back, because this connector here is used 1, 2, 3 times. You got to make sure they go back to the right spots. Now, I actually unscrewed the screen from here. You don't need to. Just take these screws here for the whole bezel to come out. But in the video I did, end up taking the whole thing out. So again, just make sure you know where all the wires go, because the connectors will go back potentially in the wrong spot. You don't want to do that. This one connector only goes in one spot, so you're fine. And just disconnect these guys very carefully. And again, just note where everything is. See how easy that comes apart. But the soldering job here and here is extremely flimsy, or I should say the wire is very flimsy. So just be careful doing this. You don't want to break the wires. What kind of stinks is I was looking to see if there's an additional button here. Player 1 has a button here, which is fine for Pong. But when you're playing Warlords, Player 1 can hold the ball. Player 2 can't, because there's no other button, and I didn't find any way to tap in and maybe put a secondary button in, so that kind of stinks. But just be very careful and note everything you're taking apart. You see, I did take the screen out of the bezel. It was not necessary. You could leave this in. Just take out these 4 screws and save them. Take out the screen bezel. And you can see the control panel and the front panel just pop out real easy at this point. Just take a flathead screwdriver, push it in, and they will pop right out. Again, just be careful of your wires. They are kind of on the flimsy side. Same here on the front. Just pop it out real easy, and everything will come apart fairly well. Now this part right here, you're not going to be reusing. We're going to use the button, but the front piece we're not going to be using, and the original control panel. Everything else we're going to kind of reuse. Again, just take pictures and note, or come back to review mine, which wire goes where, so you know where they're going when you have to reconnect them. And then start taking everything out. Just be very careful. Now, to take your battery cover out, you do have to get 4 screws underneath these feet, but they will pull off, and just save them, because you can reuse them on the bottom of your new Pong cabinet. And actually, even though some of the adhesive stayed, it's still sticky. So I was able to fit it to the bottom of my unit, and it actually fits perfectly. So it's kind of a miracle that they came off as well as they did, and you can reuse them still as they are. Just got to get these 4 screws out so you can separate the battery compartment from the side panel, which we're not going to be using. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now this adhesive stuff, just take your thumb, just rub out on it, and it'll come right off, because you want it to look clean on the back of your unit. So this part's not going to be used. You can get rid of it, toss it away. Very soon we could toss this away and this away, but we still have to get some parts off of them. But for the most part, these are all you're going to need. And your screws, so don't lose them. Here's just another shot of everything. When we put this on the back of the unit, the Atari logo is going to be upside down, which kind of stinks. I might use a hairdryer to take off the decal and flip it around. Or leave it as it is. It doesn't really matter. If you actually take the real unit and flip it in the same direction, it would be upside down as well. So it's really not a big deal. So we need to get this button out of here. And there is a spring behind it, so be careful when you take this out that you don't lose the spring. But the only thing we need is the button, the spring, and the control panel board. The rest of this is going to be tossed. But it's kind of funny that the wood on here looks very similar to the wood I got off of Amazon. So I wonder if Blaze uses the same stuff. So it's just 2 screws. And what I found interesting on these 2 screws, they actually have a locking nut in the back of it, so you can't lose the screws. I just thought it was weird that, as cheap as they made the rest of the unit, they actually put little plastic things to keep these screws on here. But in any case, just take the 2 screws out, and then you can just very carefully push on these little tabs and push this through. And again, there'll be a spring on the back side, so you don't lose that spring. And here is our control panel we're going to need. Just be very careful getting that spring out. So you can see here's our button, here is our spring, here's our control panel, and now this can be tossed away. It's no longer needed. Now, Bruce did include a decal that looks like a coin door from the machine. You might want to put that on. I didn't put it on here. I might change my mind, but I wanted to say on or off for right now, but maybe I'll change my mind and put that decal on here. Again, save all your screws. So here is our cleaned up control panel. Again, it's not as perfect in here, but you're not going to see it anyway. But all important is that this spot are okay for the tabs. That little circle and that little circle okay for the tab. And then the circle's okay for the button. The spring has to go on the back of this. You put it on here and just push it in place. But first we got to put our fake wood on, which is the next fun part. So here is the wood. And again, it didn't get a very high rating on Amazon, but I think for this project and for what I was using it for, it worked great. So just cut it a little bit bigger than you need because you're going to trim it afterwards. But it should adhere pretty well. So here it is all cut out. And we're just going to put it on. It had no bubbling, which is really interesting. It didn't bubble at all. And then after it's done, you're just going to trim it with an X-Acto knife all the way around, including in here. Which is why you don't want to put your button in yet. And that's what you come out with. Now, the one thing I didn't do, this was the very beginning. So this wasn't perfectly straight, so dumb. But again, I still think it looks fine. But if I was to redo it again, I would have went a little longer on this side as well, just so I could trim it and make it perfectly smooth and right. But you see the rest of them come out really, really nice. Sticks on very well. There was no bubbling, which is amazing. It just, for the ratings they gave it, I'm surprised. It really worked out well. Just make sure, once again, using a very sharp X-Acto knife. This is face down on the wood, and just run the X-Acto knife around the sides, and it'll trim up. And then you can push your button back in place and put your control panel back. Now, you can see some of the yellow in here. If I print this in the black, which I should have, you wouldn't really notice it as much. But again, you live and learn. I still think it looks okay. Now it's time to do the 2 side panels and the bottom piece. Same thing. Just cut the fake wood a little bit bigger than each piece. Put it on and trim it up. You can see here's the X-Acto knife. It's face down. I cut it larger than necessary. And just run the X-Acto blade carefully. Now don't go super close, because it is PLA plastic. You'll trim the plastic off. You don't want to do that. But I think once you go on the side close, you'll realize how to do it, and it will come out really, really nice. I mean, look at that. I think that came out great. And again, because of the 3D printing, it's printed in layers, it actually makes it feel like wood as you're doing this, which is kind of nice. Here's all my extras, but again, it's set on very, very well, and it adhered very well. And when I did do this, I didn't realize I should have trimmed a little bit better on the back of the PLA, because the base had a little part sticking up. You see right here. So I ended up just push this back a little bit. I trimmed it better, and it sat right back down. So again, I think this stuff is working pretty well. Here, both sides are done. It only took a few minutes. Now we have to do the base of the unit next. And this is how it turned out. And the lighting makes it look like the different colors. They're actually all the same color, just the lighting here. But again, everything came out really, really nice. That wood look is just amazing. And what's even weirder, I didn't plan this, but when these are on, like the grains actually matched up pretty well. And you see it in the final product, so it's just kind of weird how that turned out. I could never do that again. Just another shot. You can see that, you know, the coloring is better here. Now the coloring's off here just because of lighting. But everything came out well. Now again, in the arcade, the T-molding here would have been black. Mine's going to be the yellow. But again, that's fine for me. Now here's our screen holder. This is the bottom. This is the top. And again, you need to take it out of the machine as a whole piece, not separate the screen from it. So I had to go back in, take that. I don't know why I didn't realize that, to put that in place. But you'll see that in a second. So here is the one from the Blaze unit. The screw holes are here. Use your original screws to screw this in place. And then put your screen back in if you were dumb like me and took out your screen, which is not necessary. But again, all the tolerances that Gary had done here were just perfect. So you can see the screen sits in there nice and flush. Actually, it's not flush yet, but I'm going to push that in. It'll be nice and flush. And if you want, Bruce did include a printable black bezel that will go around here, because I think in the arcade this was all black here. But again, mine's going to be yellow because I want mine to be a little different. Here's just another shot here. We have to put our screen back in place over on that. Now here is the back panel. You can see the two separate pieces right now, but they're tongue and grooved, so they will slide together like so. And when you put in your Blaze speaker, power assembly, and then the battery compartment, this will all be held in really, really tight and solid. And these bars will help hold the unit as two separate pieces, all one solid unit. But this is our version 1. I think Gary's redesigned it version 2 to use screws. You can pick and choose which one you prefer. So here is my control panel I'm using with the aftermarket pots, just for the test fitting. These have to come out because I need to put my overlay here. And you want to do that first and cut out the holes so it just looks perfect on it. So just test fitting. So here is the one from the Blaze unit. And you can see here is the original spinner. And you can see if you open up any USB mouse or wireless mouse, they're going to have this type of encoder for your mouse wheel. So it's clicky. Now in the video I linked down below, you can pry this open fairly easily, and there's a little metal tab you pull out and they become free smooth spinning. But even though you can modify this fairly easy to make it, which I still don't understand why they put a clicky one in here, but you can modify it to be non-clicky, you still have to spin it 1, maybe 2 times to travel on the screen, which is way too far. So if you do modify it, you have to solder a couple of spots. But this spinner, it'll be top of screen, bottom of screen, top of screen, just like a half a turn, which is the way it should be. You shouldn't have to spin to move your character. Very small movement to move your character. It's better over here. And again, I talked to the original engineer programmer who was commissioned to do this for Blaze, and Blaze just really didn't care. You know, he was trying to do the right thing. He was trying to make it proper encoders. He was trying to make the emulation better. Blaze just really did not care, which kind of annoys me that the company at least went as far as putting these in to make it accurate and just really didn't give a crap and put in these shitty spinners. But I will say that the engineer, he reached out to me and explained to me it wasn't him. He knew he was trying to do the right thing, but Blaze really didn't care. Now, if you look here, this is put on a like a, I don't know, without it, 60-degree angle, something like that, 45-degree angle. So we did the same thing when Gary made it. But you can see it's just 3 wires. It's very easy to modify. Now, what Willie over at Arcade USA had to do, he had to kind of glue it onto here and glue it onto a tab because it didn't really fit any other way because you couldn't screw in from the top. We made it a little bit differently. But we want to take these screws out here, to take all these parts out and remove all these encoder pieces. So again, you can see here's the new one here. We took out the board, and we got to take these encoders over to my soldering station because I am going to replace these. Again, it's not necessary. We include the board if you want to keep these in here. Again, you can modify it pretty easily since it's open already. Take out the metal tab, make them non-clicky. But I would recommend these. These just what Willie did over Arcade USA did make these much better overall. So just a test fitting here on my board. You can see that here are the little indents for your new encoders. But you can see we kept that 45-degree angle here on the button. Probably not necessary, but we did. And we're using all the same screws to hold these in place. And this is the part, again, that would be yellow. And you can see here's the overlay. And the reason you don't want to put these in yet, when you put the overlay on, you can very easily trim these perfect circles out, which I did here. And you know, this came out really, really well. I'm going to zoom in just so you can see how games were back in the day. Now, there was first Space War, and people thought it was too complicated, which is why it failed. So Atari came back with this, very simple. Deposit quarter, ball will serve automatically, avoid missing ball for high score. So the early Atari, you know, starting the arcade industry, games were very simple back then. They had to be, because people didn't understand them. Of course, now it's a piece of cake and people pick it up and run with it. But it was this very simple thing that made Atari what it was back then. Very simple, very addictive, very fun gameplay. But again, here is the artwork on this decal here. And I didn't do this. This might have to be changed out as well. I don't know, because I didn't use the glossy setting on the printer. So I think these should have been black versus gray. But it just went on so well and so nice. I don't know if I want to change it. But who knows? Right now, it works. Excuse me, it works and looks good enough for me. But you know, I'm probably going to make another one, and if I do, I'll probably print it with the proper setting to print it black. So here again is the original encoder, and I need to desolder these 3 wires here, which is not too much more difficult than these. And these are the ones Willie did. These will come right off, no problem. But here are the new encoders right here, and we're just going to take this over to my soldering station and take these suckers out. So you can see I have no room here either. But here is my new one, my 1, 2, 3 for the potentiometer spinner. And there are 2 over here for the push button click, which we're not really going to deal with. But we do need to take this off. I'll get you a better shot so you can kind of see where the wires go when you take these suckers off. But again, if you want to keep them, we'll have each control panel here. But I do recommend going with these new. They're like $2 each. Just go for the better spinner. So I'll have a better shot again. But you can see there is a one with a red wire on it. That's going to go to your center. And then your middle one will go to this one. And your top one will go to this one. Not very difficult to do. But we are going to take these wires off. Here is my new encoder. And you can see right here, here's that red wire, which now goes to the center pin. Then the center wire goes to the lower pin, and the other one goes to your top pin. Now there's another pin back here, that's the back, that's for push button, I'm not touching that. But that's how it goes. Red goes to middle, middle goes to lower, upper goes to top. Very, very simple. Here we are. We have everything pushed back in place. These encoders are pushed in and locked in place, and our push buttons are here. Everything is good. Again, I think these are supposed to be black. I wish Gary didn't tell me. Till he told me, I was like, "This looks great." And I'm like, this should be black. Man, I have to probably do it again, but not today. Again, just a close shot, see how everything went. I think it came out really, really well. I like how that trimmed out. So here it is from the underside. You can see everything's in place. The encoders are put back in place. Now, Willie, when he did his, he had to glue his down. It's not necessary because we were able to lock these with the locking nuts on the other side. And everything's just held in place just perfectly. Once again, Gary, the tolerances are great. Just another shot showing how everything fits in very, very well. Again, these wires are a little on the chintzy side. Just be careful with work. Don't bend them too much. They're probably not going to survive it. And now we put on my spinner tops with the skirts. And it looks great. And they spin very smooth. And they're not going to spin and spin and spin. The arcade, you know, they had some weight behind them. Unfortunately, that's not going to be the case with these, but they will definitely work much, much better than the original. And you can kind of see the original Blaze one I have back here on this unit here. And you see the skirts hide those lock nuts in the screw. And it just comes out and looks the part. And it went together easily, which is great. So now it's just kind of putting everything in place here. Now the battery wire is going to go over to here. I think it goes right into this little spot right here, and it does make it, but it's super tight.
That's what she said.
I recommend, and I did. I made it like an inch longer. You can really try if you want to, but you might break that wire. I would definitely recommend, you know, if you have to, just cut right here, extend it, and put, you know, electrical tape on both sides. And this wire here, which is your main power coming from the micro USB, it is super, super, super tight. I also extended this. I would definitely recommend extending those too. But you can see everything just slots in place. This just sits in here and leans on here. All these just sit in a groove on the base here, and kind of lock with these little connectors here. The version 2 will be much more solid at this point. This part, I don't say it's the frustrating part, but you have to make sure everything's sitting in the right spot to close it. Once it's closed, it's fine. This could take you a little bit, but the version 2 will be a screw, bam, because it'll go right in, no problem. But you're still going to have to extend this battery wire and this 5-volt lead here. and then you kind of just screw them into these posts here, and then the back panel will slide in over them and cover everything. But that's pretty much it. You're like pretty much almost done. Just another shot here. You can see the wires do make it, but when you get over to these parts here, it's just, this one would do it, but it's scary tight, and you worry about the soldering joints pulling off. The battery one is even tighter. I mean, it makes it, but you are really putting pressure on the connector. Just, if you have to, cut in the middle, extend it. I desoldered it and extended it. I desoldered this one and extended it, but you can very easily just cut them, twist the wires together, and put electrical tape on them to cover them up or something along those lines. But I would definitely recommend doing that. Everything else will be long enough and fit just fine. So here are the locking posts. One goes down here, and then you print these two smaller ones that slide behind it, and then the back panel piece will take up this last little spot and lock this whole bottom module. And then there's one up here that locks going across here, and the back post will go in all the way. There's no separate posts for this one. But when they're in place, this will be solid and will not come apart. But Gary and I agreed that maybe screws may even be better, and this thing will be like super solid. But again, these posts will definitely work, and everything just slides in place really well. You can see it just slides in like this all the way down, and once you put them in place, everything's fairly solid. Now, I think I forgot to take a picture of when these two are mounted with the back panel. I'm not sure if I took a picture of that or not, but you can see right here, this is your 5 volts from your micro USB. So I desoldered here, extended the wire, resoldered it down, soldered the wires together, and put electrical tape around them just to extend it, to make it a little bit safer, I think, versus having it break. So here's our top post put in place. There's no separate bars here. The actual back piece, when you put it on, will have the piece that locks that down. And you see I'm screwing in using the original screws into these posts. Got to do the same thing to these posts, and that'll hold that in place. But I do think I forgot the actual photograph of the actual back panel. It looks like I did. So here it is, pretty much assembled. Just missing the screen bezel, which I have here, which again, I didn't print with the right setting. So it's not printing black, it printed gray. Here's another shot. You see the control panel's in place. Bruce again did put a decal for this that looked like a coin door. From right now, I just have mine with the on and off. And these should be black, black T-molding. Mine is yellow, but I think I like how that looks. And back here, this should be black where the screen is, but mine is yellow. And this Pong is gray versus black. But again, I don't think it looks bad, so I might just leave it as it is. Here is an earlier shot with using the regular paper, not the glossy paper, and you can see it is in fact black. So it looks like Gary and Bruce were right, it didn't print the right way. So maybe I'll print another one, but you can see I just used a cheap piece of plastic overlay film here. That's what you're seeing. It's just a piece of paper behind it. It really should be like a CD jewel case or a piece of acrylic. But every time I tried cutting it, and I scored 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 it, and it still cracked. And it still split. So I got to find some better way to cut it. But for the meantime, right now, I think that came out fairly well. Here's just a front shot again, with Pong being black, but it's black and white, so that's why it's black. And I think everything fit fairly well. The wood came in pretty good, and I like having the yellow here. But again, technically in the arcade, it should have been black. So since I forgot to take a shot of what it looks like in the back, here it is. You can see these little slots here will hold in your top brace going across. And then this would not be, misshapen. Once everything's closed up, it would fit in perfectly. And you have your one panel up here, another panel down here. And use a 1, 2, 3, 4 screws to hold this in place. And here's just a shot here real quick. I ended up using a very thin piece of transparency paper for right now to hold up. This really should be acrylic. See how thick that should be? It should be like a CD jewel case or a piece of acrylic. But again, I kept breaking them, so for right now, that's what I ended up using. So that's pretty much it. Once you close up that back panel, it's just putting in some batteries and putting a micro USB on it. And we'll do some gameplay of this in just a moment. But I think overall, this thing really came out super well. I mean, it looks the part. Again, I know I'm saying it a million times, that should have been black. I get it. So this would have been black down here, and that should have been black inside. But I like how that looks. It pops a little bit more, in my opinion. But enough just looking at photographs. Let's do some gameplay and see how some of the games work on this Blaze Pong modified by Bruce Yager's original design that Gary modified for 3D printing, and we will put these files up on Thingiverse. Pong, the arcade game.
It. I mean, the printing of the panels for the most part, like 11 hours for the longest to print. After that, there were much shorter time frames. And the beautiful thing about 3D printing is once you make one, you can make as many as you want. When you're doing wood, you got to sand and cut all the time. So 3D printing does have some advantages if you wanted to make more or share it with the community, so people can pretty much make what you made and get pretty much the same result as long as your printer is set up okay. So this was kind of nice, but it does not compare anything at all to what Bruce had created here and Gary. And here is the final product. First of all, I love the wood grain on here. I got this off of Amazon. I'll put all the items I got down in the description. But here we go. I mean, this is, again, it is Pong. It'd be better if it was the arcade Pong, so I might make another one of these with a Raspberry Pi. I think the main version of Pong is better. I'm also thinking about getting a non-working Atari home console Pong, and see if I can get it modified and stick it in the cabinet. That'd be the best way to go if I could, to get a non-working Pong, get it working again, and throw it in here. But again, this thing is just gorgeous. You know, it's one of the machines that really kicked off the whole industry. And I keep showing the side here because I really like the woodworking, and the 3D printing has a texture. And when you put this on here, it does feel like wood, which is just amazing. But I'm gonna turn this a little bit more so you can see the side here. Now, here's the front. We recreated 2 new spinner tops on here, which I think look much, much nicer. They feel good because they're true potentiometers. They actually spin very smoothly. Now, of course, the arcade Pong had weight behind it like my spinner, and you could spin it further. That's not going to do it with these. It's just regular potentiometers. We'll go around to the other side here and go around to the back right here. And you can see we still have our headphone jack, volume control, battery compartment door. The Atari logo is upside down. I might use a hair dryer to take that off, just spin the sticker around, just the way it turned out that way. You can see even on the bottom of the unit, we got that nice wood grain look, and we can see the rubber feet with actually the original rubber feet from the Blaze version. There they are right there. So I was able to even reuse those. They're sticky enough where they went right back on. And just a quicker shot here. So I like how the marquee head came out in here. Now, if you notice the arcade Pong, I'm showing you over here, and mine, the arcade Pong, this was actually black down here. This is just my prototype, but I think I actually like it more with the yellow. I think it just pops a little bit more. But the next one I make may be more truer to the arcade with going with black. And actually, I do have a decal here that Bruce made that will turn this into a coin door. And I didn't do that here just yet. I don't know why I didn't do it. I just didn't. But this thing pretty much went together really, really well. Probably the hardest part of the whole build was just cutting out the plastic here. Now, in Gary's original version, it was to use a old CD. I don't have right here. An old CD cover to cut, but you can see I keep cracking it. So the CD cover would be the proper better way to go, or a little piece of acrylic, but I kept cracking them. So I just basically used a thin piece of transparency film you'd get at Staples that you'd print on for a projector to show on it. So it's very, very thin. But once I put the decal on there, it stiffened up a little bit, and it's doing the job. It's probably something I want to improve, get a real more solid, but for now, that's working okay. And again, we'll do some gameplay in this. It's got a couple of games on here, so let's just see how they play. Again, this is better with 2 people versus 1, but it's better than nothing. Let's just see how this thing plays. Okay, so we have our Blaze Arcade Pong here, and basically we're gonna hit the start button here. It'll play 1 player, so this would be a 1 player. If you play 2 players, it'd be over here, but we're gonna do 1 player right now. Let's start it up. The smooth potentiometer makes a big difference in the gameplay. Let's go to a 2-player game, just to show you how it plays with 2 players here, that both potentiometers work. So I'll hit the select button, 2-player, hit start. You can see both work here. And it does make a difference. I mean, if you're going to make a game like this and use clicky spinners, it's just not worth it. And of course, you're going to set the game up like this and play forever because it's Pong. Let's take a look at some of the other games we have on here. Hit the reset button here, takes you back. Another fun game that I like playing, obviously, is Breakout. There's also Super Breakout, but I personally like Breakout more. Hit start on that. And again, you have 1 or 2 players you can play with this, but we're going to do a 1-player. Hit the start button. And one of the things that are really off with this more than anything is the audio. The audio is definitely a little bit off. Let's hit the reset button. And again, we could take a look at Super Breakout. It's just not one I prefer more than regular Breakout. Again, just because I played it Breakout first. But there's nothing wrong with Super Breakout. Most people actually do prefer Super Breakout. But for me, I'll play this one. You have all the game variations. You can go in here, you can select through game variations. Pick this one right here. It's funny, my neighbor who used to live around here, she moved to Florida, Mary, and I used to play these games all the time, and we were very competitive. She would cream me a couple of times, I'd cream her a couple of times in the game, but if it was Kaboom, yeah, she was pretty much always beating me in that game. But in Breakout, Circus Atari, Pong, it was pretty equal. But if it was Asteroids, she had no chance. So again, when this was a clicky dial, I mean, you could play it, but you see how little I have to turn here to make my paddle go from side to side. You would have to go 2 to 3 times more of a rotation to do the same amount. So this is definitely more real to how it would have been on the game. But again, this is just Super Breakout. Let's go out of here, hit our reset. You know, they have Video Olympics, which is basically the Atari 2600 version of these games. Circus Atari is another one of my favorites right here, so I'm going to go into that for a second. Basically, there are a bunch of balloons at the top of the screen, and your goal is to basically pop as many as you can with your guy at the bottom. And I will also say that the screen on here is decent, but it definitely doesn't have the best viewing angles. But we'll start this up anyway, and start it up. Ooh, splattered his head already. Oh, that's gonna give him a headache. But it's a very simple game, but it's very fun. Be prepared to do this for a long time. Oh. Might be my last guy. Oh, well, one left. That might be my last guy. It was. Let's see what else we have on here. So we'll go to the next screen. We have Street Racer, Night Driver. You know, Night Driver, again, was based on an arcade game. And I can get over to it. One more. That's what, Night Driver? It's hard to see on the screen through the camera. I think I have Night Driver there. So I'm going to select that here. And it's a very simple game, but it gives you a good effect of looking like you're driving down the road. So we'll start it up here. Hit the gas pedal. Again, we're talking, you know, video games from 1977 era. The graphics are not going to be the most incredible, but again, back in the day, ooh, this was very, very good. Just very hard to see Night Driver on this screen. So I'm going to go back out of here and see if there's anything else we want to take a look at. We obviously have Warlords, so we're going to take a look at some Warlords. So again, here's the problem with Warlords with this. You have your one spinner and your player one button. And in Warlords, you can hold on to the ball. But since you only have one button, only player one can do that. There's no player two button. So you're cheating already playing Warlords. So this, unfortunately, they've kind of ruined this one as well. But we'll start it up. Yeah, I can't see the ball at all. I'm playing totally blind from the camera angle here. But it looks like I'm still doing pretty good. Okay, let me give you some of my final thoughts of the Bruce Yager and Gary conversion of the BLAZE unit into Arcade Pong. Okay, here we see them both side by side. Here's the original one from BLAZE Pong, and then the one from Bruce and Gary that we 3D printed. And you know, it's, to me, it's night and day. I mean, this is okay, but this just looks beautiful, even just sitting on yourself. Again, the versions of games on here are from the Atari 2600. Aside from Pong, which I believe is like a homebrew version of it, and it's not a spectacular version. But again, I think this looks fantastic. I really do like it a lot. Turn that aside a little bit, because I just think that thing looks really, really nice. You can see the wood grain still looks pretty good. So overall, you know, if you want to print this, I am going to throw these up on Thingiverse, so you can print your own. And I'll put a list of, you know, some items you'll need to make this happen. Now again, I did replace the spinners in here for the new potentiometers. But if you did want to use the original ones, Gary even made, you know, a special one here that will still work with the original BLAZE if you want to use the clicky clickies, or modify them so it still becomes non-clicky but still the original spinners. But if you can, and you're doing this anyway, I'd probably recommend replacing them completely with the real potentiometers. It just feels a lot better. But I do hope you guys liked the video, and also my sponsor Angel. If you guys are looking for light-up marquees, he makes the best ones out there and very reasonably priced, and they're made with care. But that's it for today's video.
What the deuce?
I'm really happy how this thing turned out. And again, you could have something like this at home, which is just fine. But if you have a 3D printer, someone who has one, or if you go on Thingiverse, they can print it for you over there. I just think that that looks so much better. But in any case, guys, I want to thank you all for watching Glenn's Retro Show. If you did like the video, please like, share, subscribe. Do share it. I want more people to see this little guy, and maybe they can make their own. I'm sure there's a lot of people who have this Blaze around the world who would rather have something along the lines of this from Bruce and Gary. In any case, guys, I want to thank you all for watching once again. And remember, no matter what you do, no matter how you do it, just remember to game on. I'm going to do some more of that right now myself. I think I might take a nap while I play.
At the Tiny Arcade fan page. Remember, don't admire people too much. They'll disappoint you.
Sit, Blue Blue, sit. Good dog.